So I just filled the propane tank. So that's the clanking you hear. That's the float ball inside the tank rattling around. And I just decided I'm going to try something new. Instead of just storing cans directly in the lockers, I'm going to put them in plastic bins. Because I find that in rough weather, the cans will rattle around, and especially if they get wet, the labels will come off of them. So sometimes you'll have cans in the lockers and you have absolutely no idea what's inside. So we'll see how this works. I also put some foam sheets in the bottom of the lockers to keep those plastic containers from moving around. So try something new and see how it goes. So I'm almost done with provisioning, but I missed the weather window, which closed on Sunday morning, November 3rd. And no windows in sight as of yet, so I'll take the time to catch up on some projects I've been meaning to do for a while. One is to replace the leather on the stanchion there where I lashed the skelling oar, because the stanchion is starting to eat into the oar there and chip the paint off and so forth. So put a leather on there and see if that'll help to protect it. So I've been thinking about some alternative routes to my proposed route of going down through the Bahamas. Still planning to come down from the north and enter the Providence Channel and into the Northwest Providence Channel. And originally I was going to skirt around the shoal on the northwest side of the Great Bahama Bank and then hug Bimini in the shoal there to keep out of the contrary Gulf Stream current, and then on to Key Sal and Key West. This has a couple disadvantages. One is that it's rather circuitous, so we add some distance. However, of course, it does keep me in deep water. That's the main reason for choosing that route. The other disadvantage is it looks like I'm going to have to stay quite close to Bimini in the shoals here to stay away from this Gulf Stream current. You can see fairly close to the shoal, they still have current arrows there, 1.8 knots of contrary current. Now, some people have suggested to me to consider cutting across the Bahama Bank, and I was always a little afraid to do that. I always wanted to stay in deep water. However, I did download these Explorer charts for OpenCPN, which gives me a little more detail here. And you can see that we have some routes marked here across the bank. And in particular, there's a route from Russell Beacon to South Riding Rock. And if we follow that all the way through, we see South Riding Rock goes to just south of Castle Rock there, and then we're back out into deep water. And it's showing a controlling depth of about 3 meters all the way across, so a little less than 10 feet. In the distance there, South Rock to Russell Beacon is 42 miles, of course a 249 true. So it's possible to do that in the daytime, and they do recommend you do this passage in the daytime so you can see the water. If we happen to arrive in the evening or late afternoon, there's a couple of anchor symbols here, so it looks like it's possible just to anchor right by the shoal here, assuming the wind is easterly. You can anchor right by the shoal. I could anchor there for the night and then start off across the bank in the daytime. So that is definitely a possibility. So the only literature I've been able to find on this passage was from the 2009 edition of Reed's Almanac. It says here, Great Bahama Bank, many vessels drawing less than 6 feet cross the banks from Gun Key Light, Northwest Channel. We don't plan on doing that. That entrance looks pretty tricky. The controlling depth of this route has been reported as 5 feet. I draw 4.5. So I like to have at least a couple of feet under the keel. However, it says the very last sentence here, Good depths have been reported on the route from South Riding Rock Light to the Russell Beacon remains, then on to the Northwest Channel. So that's going the other way. Vessels should expect little protection anchoring between South Riding Rock and Castle Rock. So it says poor anchoring between South Riding Rock and right in here, but we shouldn't need to anchor there because remember, we're going the other way. We're headed southwest. So if we got to that point, then we'll just get out into the deep water and continue on our merry way. So Reed says, as of 2009, says this passage is pretty clear and there's sufficient water. So if any of you have recently done this trip across the bank from South Riding to Russell Beacon, let me know in the comments. And let me know any observations you've had, whether of shoal spots or coral reefs you've seen anywhere, or sunken vessels, perhaps after this last hurricane. Yeah, if any of you recently done this, let me know in the comments. I would be most interested to hear that. Okay, so let's have a look at our weather situation. It is Sunday, November 10th, and we're right here in Hampton, Virginia. And recall, we're looking to go get out in the Gulf Stream, past Hatteras across the Gulf Stream, then drop due south, and then come south-southwest down through the Bahamas, and then on to our final destination, Key West, Florida. And the reasons for taking that route I discussed in another video. So today we have quite nice weather. Southwesterly winds, about, well, offshore 15 knots in here, yeah, about 10 knots or so. So we get into Monday, southwest becoming a little more southerly, which is not quite as good if we left. That would be on our nose. However, Tuesday, as we got another fairly strong front approaching. And as we get into Wednesday, as you can see, there's a lot of wind behind this front. Basically 30 knots behind the front, 29 knots sustained. And if we look at wind gusts, gusting 44 knots. So basically, you're looking at 25, 35 with higher gusts. So it's going to be pretty rough behind that front. So I'm not much tempted to leave until that front has moved away from me. So let's take a look at Wednesday evening. So the next possibility is we could leave Wednesday evening, and we'd have northerly winds in the teens. As we get into Thursday, say we get down close to Cape Hatteras, then we just have light easterly winds. That's all fine. However, those would become more south-southeast. That's not quite so good because it'd be right, it's almost right on our nose, and we're trying to get past the Gulf Stream. So as we get into Friday, more southeasterly winds. It looks like we got a front coming towards us. Okay. As we get into Saturday, we would have favorable winds, except looks like an area of low pressure is going to form here. And those winds are really going to pick up from the northeast. I mean, if we were down here somewhere, we're looking at sustained winds over 30 knots. And it would only get worse unless we could get south of this. 35, 38. So that's force 9, possibly storm force. Let's look at wind gusts. Wind gusts 54 knots. So basically that's storm conditions. Well, so much for leaving on Wednesday, huh? So where could be our next window here? Oh, this thing's going to hang around. Okay, well, Monday, start off with, well, 30 knots out of the north. Maybe, how about Monday afternoon? Okay, Then we might have northwesterlies. It'll ease a bit. We get into Tuesday. Then we'd have just southwest. That's all right. But possibly another low developing there. So still nothing. So, and this is the European Center for Medium Range Weather Forecasting model. So by this model, I don't see anything. I don't see any windows at all. So let's go back and check the GFS model. So I don't plan to leave before Wednesday because we got this strong cold front, and on the GFS is sustained winds behind the front over 30 knots. So that's probably going to be force 9, force 8 to force 9, 30 to 40 knots. And it's, even though it's a favorable direction, that's a lot of wind. So let's look at a Wednesday. Let's look at a Wednesday departure from the GFS. So we start off with fairly brisk northerlies, and then by Thursday, we get down to Cape Hatteras, maybe entering the Gulf Stream. We got kind of light northeasterlies. That's fine. And then we get into Friday, and we got east to southeast, 15 knots. Close reaching, not too bad, but and then becoming more easterly. So I'll say we get down here by late Friday. Still not bad, but it looks like the GFS is also showing a low pressure forming. And we get into Saturday. Okay, so it's showing this low pressure tracking off toward Bermuda. And so by Saturday, we'd have northeasterly winds, but quite brisk. 27 knots. So I would say that's probably going to be 25 to 35. So a light gale out of the northeast. Yeah, so, and still, near gale conditions all of Saturday. We get into Sunday, beginning to ease up some, but still brisk. So by the GFS, a Wednesday departure is a maybe. But given that the by the European model, it's an absolute no-go. So we'll have to monitor that. But let's look at a Sunday departure by the GFS. So Sunday, we'd start off with northeasterly winds. And we get to Monday, and we just have light northeasterly, so that wouldn't be bad. Then we get into Tuesday, with southeast but light. That still wouldn't be too bad. That's better than 40 knots. And maybe coming a little east-southeast, but still moderate. So the GFS is showing possibly Sunday, but of course that's way out. Once you get out past about a week in the forecast, it's more of an outlook than a forecast. One possibility I thought of is maybe on Wednesday to sail around, and Wednesday wouldn't be a bad day to sail around Hatteras and go into Beaufort. Beaufort gets me a little closer, plus it's fairly close to the Gulf Stream, so maybe for a change of pace. On the other hand, if I'm going to go through all the preparations and stowing everything, getting the dinghy up on deck and all that for an offshore passage, I prefer just to do the whole thing in one go. Just because, as I say, it's a lot of work getting the whole boat provisioned and everything stowed and the boat ready for sea. Just to go out for a couple of days and then reverse the whole process. But maybe I'll do that. We'll see.